All right, Jordan, we got to talk about a lot of the things going on in the offseason of this college football season. It has been, we've talked about conference expansion, we've talked about different formats for the new and upcoming expanded playoff, even though we just expanded to 12 teams, but apparently that's not enough. We need to expand more, and we got to figure out what format we're going to. And one of the other things that have come up, and it's been talked about in the past several times, but as everybody knows, the ACC and the SEC both are the two conferences that only play 8 conference games. And there's some noise out there in the SEC about them going to, excuse me, possibly going to 9 conference games. But here's the question that immediately goes in my mind when I hear the SEC going to 9 conference games and possibly having a rotating schedule with the Big Ten for a 10th game on the schedule. Are we seeing the death of rivalry weekend? What do I mean by that? The death of rivalry weekend would mean to me, if you look in the SEC, there is several teams, Georgia, South Carolina, Kentucky, just to name a few, that have ACC in-state rivals that they play on rivalry weekend every single year. And it's been that way for a long time, for as long as we can remember, right? For as long as we've been watching college football. And now it seems that those very games, as much as the universities, I don't think South Carolina wants to not play Clemson. I know for certain Clemson doesn't not want to not play South Carolina, right? Both universities want those games to happen. But let me pose to you this scenario, Jordan, and let's just get your thoughts and we'll talk about it. And those of you in the comment section, let me know what you think. Let's say the SEC goes to a 9-game conference schedule, right? And then has a rotating scheduling agreement, if you will, with the Big Ten. That would be 10 Power 5 opponents that every SEC team is playing each and every year. Is any SEC team really going to be interested in adding an 11th Power 5 game, especially when it's a rivalry game for an in-state rival? I don't know. I don't see that happening. And I just think we're getting to a point in college football where we're talking about all this expansion and we're talking about all this schedule changes, and we're not thinking about necessarily repercussions that could come from said schedule changes, right? Those are my thoughts. Jordan, what do you think about the situation? Not that you care whether the SEC goes to a 9-game conference schedule or not, but really where it affects us is obviously the Clemson-South Carolina rivalry. I don't want to see rivalry weekend go away or be diminished in any way, any significant way at all. So your thoughts on the potential schedule change and just all the stuff that is just kind of, like I've said before, time and time again, they just slowly chip away at the fabric of what makes college football college football. And when you think of college football in my mind, one of the first things I think about is rivalry weekend. I mean, it's one of the most energy-filled, intense weekends in all of college football. So your thoughts?
Yeah. It's definitely an interesting, topic and conversation because, there are so many, there's so much crossover from the rivalry weekend between, the SEC and the ACC. From a Clemson standpoint, I'm not worried as much. I do think administratively, Clemson and South Carolina seem to be on the same page, at least from what I've been told. And from what people who are close to the South Carolina program have reported, there seems to be no intention of ever dropping the game. So I from that standpoint, I think that's a good thing. I think both universities are on the same page and very clear and lockstep in that they intend to keep that game on the schedule, no matter what changes throughout the sport happen. So I think that's a good thing. Because you're seeing it across the sport. I mean, obviously, I was talking SEC, ACC, but it's not just those teams that are involved in rivalry weekend. And one of the biggest rivalries in college football, and USC and Notre Dame, I think is very much in danger of dying.
Yeah.
Or at least the annual series, going away. And because the Big Ten, 9 conference games, and the USC, especially administratively, seems to be of the mindset that they don't want to play that extra game against it's not a power 4 opponent, but they're the equivalent within within the independents. So
Right.
I think that's going to start a wave potentially, for other programs of where you wouldn't see those annual games being played, especially if they're not an an in-conference foe. Like, well, obviously we're talking about non-conference, but especially if their biggest rival is an in-conference foe, and their regular non-conference rival is like a secondary rivalry, like they might be willing to drop it even if it has a lot of eyeballs on it, and it's is well regarded by the fans. So I think USC Notre Dame is the prime example right now of the changes in the sport affecting rivalries, and I would hate to see that rivalry go, but it seems like that's very likely. I would be surprised if USC and Notre Dame line up on the schedule next year. So that's sad.
It's unfortunate, man. It's one of the biggest games in college football, right? Regardless of what you think of Notre Dame, regardless of what you think of Southern Cal, it's still a massive rivalry game and has been for years. And it's just unfortunate. I get it. I get it from a financial standpoint. And you got the house settlement, and you got to pay players $20+ million now, and everything's more expensive than it ever was. And these conferences, they need money. So I get it. Like, it's every decision made in college football right now is solely focused on what is going to make the most money. That's just it. Like, if you want to line up all the decisions that have been made, it's all in effort to get more money. Expanding the playoff. The only reason they expanded the playoff is because it makes them more money. Do you think they really care about inclusion of teams that couldn't get in a 4-team playoff? No. They expanded the playoff because it makes them more money. The reason they want the SEC to go to a 9-game schedule is because it would make the SEC as a conference more money, right? The TV revenue goes up. That's another game, right? For each team that's a big ticket TV game, right? A conference game, right? So I understand that why the decisions are being made, and that the main catalyst is money. But it's just unfortunate because they strip away at the fabric of college football, and it slowly just degrades. Not that I don't love the sport, not that I think rivalry weekend is going away completely, but these are just things that are being talked about and could happen that could greatly affect some of these rivalries. Obviously, not all of them, because a lot of great rivalries are conference rivals, right? As well as in-state rivals. But in the case of the SEC and the ACC, there's a lot of crossover there. And maybe 2027 comes around and Clemson moves on and joins the SEC, and all of this is a moot point, and none of it mattered anyway. But from where we are right now, I don't like it. I don't like all the changes that are happening. I like some of them. I don't like all of them. And that's one of the ones where, if you're going to start messing with rivalry weekend in any way, or degrading that weekend of college football in any way, I'm out. I don't want to hear none of that. I'm not in support of any of that. That's one of my favorite weekends in every college football season. Regardless of, and it's not just, I don't just watch the Clemson South Carolina game, right? Like, I love all the rivalries, right? Like, Auburn, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, like all the big rivalry games, like those are exciting. That's part of what makes college football. So I hope that all these talks and decisions don't end up affecting that weekend. That's the long version of what I'm trying to say. So get your thoughts in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think. Would the SEC go into a 9-game schedule and possibly having a scheduling agreement with the Big Ten, making them have 10 power games a season? Would that affect these ACC crossover rivalries? Let me know what you guys think.